Hi there, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live premiere, I appreciate it. Today we're continuing on with the Bibbins case file, looking at official court documents from the past. This time round, more up to date compared to the first two we looked at, which was in the 1980s. Now, if you want to hear about the 1980s court documents and previous crimes committed by Bibbins, which are more shocking than Brenner, be sure to catch up on those videos. They're available on my channel in recent time, and I'll provide some links top right corner of the screen where you see that little eye symbol. You hover over it, you click on it, and then you can see the videos you may have not watched. You can catch up on them when you do have spare time. But right now, we're looking today at a 2011 court document of Bibbins, and I believe it might be to do with Arizona. We'll get into the details shortly. What we can also do today is acknowledge, I guess, comments from the last video. There's only a very small amount, but there was a key point mentioned by Christy. It needs to be acknowledged, and it's kind of like a follow-up from her original question, so it needs to be looked at and answered if possible. I'll just give you my thoughts and opinions. And as said, when we go throughout this video, when we look at the official court document to do with Bibbins, be sure to let me know your thoughts, opinions, reactions in the live chat box if you're currently here. And for those that watch late, catching on replay a following day, share your thoughts and comments and additional stuff, questions down below in the comment section below this video. Down below as well, pinned comment, there'll be some additional links if you wish to check them out. If you want to support the channel, there's alternative ways, okay? And if you're in a, just to highlight, because I've not said it for a long time, I don't always like saying it, but if you're in a situation where you want to support the channel, but you feel you're controlled by other people from further afar, you could be watching in the background, lurking in the distance. You don't want to show your presence because it might blow your cover. It might reveal who you are, and you prefer to stay anonymous. You want to support the channel in an anonymous way. The link or two down below will guide you in that way. An anonymous super chat, okay? Link down below in the comment section, pinned comment, anonymous super chat, if you wish to remain silent, okay, but show support. I thought I'd just explain it there just in case, because some people may see links and think, what's it all about? So just a bit of backstory context there. Now, with that all being said and done, credit to all the people that have been watching recently, of course, just in general, and new people watching along the way, but specifically the people that have been patient enough watching along those Bibbins videos and going through those court documents, right? Maybe it can get a bit repetitive long. Today, it seems much longer. So strap yourself in, feel free to listen along. Later on in this video, we will address previous comments and go from there. But I think right now it's just time to get straight into it and look at Bibbins' court document of 2011 to see if any more crimes revealed, talked about, referenced from the past. Let's head on over. On screen, it reads United States v. Bibbins, 2011, United States Court of Appeals, 9th Circuit. So once again, it's some kind of appeal. We'll just read through it, see what it's all about. If you do wish to pause the video at any point, if you want to read it out yourself, feel free to do so. So first it says, opinion. After a court trial in front of a magistrate judge, Kevin Bibbins was convicted of 2 misdemeanors. 1, resisting a government employee or agent in violation of 36 CFR section 232, and 2, obstructing a license plate in violation of 36 CFR and Nevada revised statutes section 482. Okay. The charges arose out of a traffic stop that escalated into an altercation between Bibbins and 4 park rangers in Lake Mead National Recreation Area, Nevada. Bibbins appeals both convictions. For the reasons stated below, we affirm. Okay, so we got different type of misdemeanors this time showing up around 2011, I would assume, or so, that year. So 1, resisting a government employee or agent. And then 2, obstructing a license plate. So I assume that the license plate was the first issue in which he was pulled on over at a traffic stop, and with that resistance against higher authority, that was the next issue. Now, I did say escalated, an altercation. Does that mean physically? We'll see down below. But I guess one thing you can take from this is when Bibbins is in trouble or caught up in something he's done wrong, he instantly retaliates back in some way or another. He shows a form of resistance. Is that something Brenner does as well? Let me know if you notice comparisons there. So here we go. 1, background. On April 8th, 2008. So not 2011. The 2011 court document is to do with the appeal, but the actual crime and issue took place April 8th, 2008. Bibbins was stopped by park rangers Michelle Schonzeit and Eric Westphal whilst he was driving a motorhome in Lake Mead National Recreation Area. The motorhome was towing a pickup truck. The rangers stopped Bibbins to inform him that a garbage bag had slipped over the back edge of the pickup truck and obscured the truck's license plate. Okay. After Bibbins pulled over, Schonzeit approached the front cabin of the motorhome and informed Bibbins that his truck's license plate was obscured. To which Bibbins replied, "You don't need to see my damn license plate. It's there." So a little bit rude from Bibbins, isn't it? Right? Resistance. You don't need to see my damn license plate in response to that police person. Okay. Schonzeit then asked Bibbins several times whether he had any weapons in his vehicle. Bibbins eventually told Schonzeit that he did not have any weapons. After dispatching Bibbins' driver's license and registration information to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, LVMPD, Schonzeit and Westphal learned that Bibbins had an active felony warrant from Clark County, Nevada, and that Bibbins' record included prior charges of assaulting officers and other violent conduct. Schonzeit called for assistance, and park rangers Brian Lake and Teresa Pickard soon reported to the scene. The 4 rangers all testified that they formulated a plan to ask Bibbins to exit the motorhome and walk back to the truck so that they could arrest him per request of the LVMPD. Okay, that's interesting, that. So when I say a felony, does that tie in with not being allowed to have a firearm or not? Because taking in mind, fast forward to recent time, about 8th of November 2023, Bibbins arrested by police because of being in possession of a firearm when he's not supposed to, just like Brenner. And I guess that's partially charged from the past and past criminal history that's tagged along, which has then led to restrictions, not being allowed to have this, access to that, because you could be considered a danger. You've been in trouble in the past. Seems to be the same with Bibbins. The fact that Bibbins has gotten into these altercations with time, right? So Bibbins' record included prior charges of assaulting officers and other violent conduct. So it kind of highlights that Bibbins, he doesn't care who you are, whether you're authority or not, high up in the hierarchy, he will lash out. Can be considered dangerous, right? So against Dylan Rounds, what would Bibbins be like? You know what I'm saying? Moving on. It says, Using a microphone, Lake instructed Bibbins to exit the motorhome and walk towards the Rangers, who were standing at the back of the pickup truck. As Bibbins made his way towards the back of the truck, he was instructed to place his hands above his head, which he did not do, so resisted. Whilst walking towards the Rangers, Bibbins announced that his leg was broken. Well, if his leg was broken, how can he be walking properly then? 3 of the Rangers testified that they noticed Bibbins walking with a limp. Okay. And they all testified that they heard him say his leg was broken as he walked towards the back of the pickup truck. Bibbins was not wearing a walking boot to immobilize his leg, nor was he using crutches. Bibbins testified, however, that he had a walking boot in his motorhome, but that could not be worn whilst driving because the width of the boot made it impossible to operate the pedals. Bibbins testified that he did not put on his walking boot after being ordered to leave the motorhome because he thought the Rangers wanted him to exit immediately. Bibbins also had crutches in his pickup truck. An audio recording of the event confirms that Bibbins told the Rangers that his crutches were in the truck, but the Rangers did not allow him to retrieve the crutches. Okay. Here we go, move on to the next one. When Bibbins reached the back of the pickup truck, he tightly gripped the truck's tailgate. Bibbins testified that at that point his right leg was very sore from driving without the walking boot, and he was unable to put his full weight on his right leg. Bibbins further testified that he was worried that his leg would break again if he put his full weight on it. Bibbins also testified that he had not taken his prescribed pain medication that day. Lake testified that he instructed Bibbins not to grab the back of the truck and ordered Bibbins to spread his legs. Bibbins responded by repeating that his leg was broken. The Rangers then grabbed Bibbins' arms and attempted to pull them behind his back. Lake grabbed Bibbins' left arm, whilst Schonzeit and Westphal grabbed Bibbins' right arm. Pickard stood ready to handcuff Bibbins. Okay. At this point, the testimony of the Rangers and Bibbins differs. Bibbins testified that the Rangers forced his hands behind his back, disengaged, and then tased him. The Rangers testified that when they attempted to put Bibbins' hands behind his back, he continued to tightly grip the tailgate of the truck and tensed his arms. Form of resistance, maybe. The Rangers testified that Bibbins then shifted his weight towards Lake, who was standing to Bibbins' left, and raised his right arm. There is inconsistency between the Rangers as to whether Bibbins actually freed his right arm from the grip of Schonzeit and Westphal. The Rangers then let go of Bibbins, backed away, and drew their tasers. Lake ordered Bibbins to get on the ground, to which Bibbins responded, "I can't, my leg is broke." Lake then immediately tased Bibbins in 2 places in his back. The electronic current from the taser caused Bibbins to fall to the ground. Bibbins then complied with all of the Rangers' instructions. Now my question is, if Bibbins' leg is broken, how can you even be walking on it in the first place? I mean, I guess it maybe depends how bad the break is and whether it's healed up since. Maybe Bibbins once had a broken leg and was on recovery, but still, it was vulnerable. I don't know. It's just the way it's worded here, right? I mean, some people could imply that maybe the police are being too forceful, but then again, if Bibbins is resisting, that could pose as a threat. What is he doing? What is he going to do? Is he armed, or is he going to fight back? Because taking in mind, if they got the records from the past of Bibbins violently attacking police officers and others, even against the authority and the law, if police are on to Bibbins in this situation on April, was it 8th of 2008, you're going to be cautious regardless, right? If you know what Bibbins has been like previously towards a certain type of people. Moving on. At Bibbins' trial, Dr. Mark Rosen offered expert testimony about the nature of Bibbins' leg injury. Dr. Rosen did not treat Bibbins, but reviewed all of Bibbins' medical records. Dr. Rosen confirmed that Bibbins had broken his leg earlier in 2008, previous, and that his leg had not healed at the time of his arrest. Okay, that makes sense as to why Bibbins said he didn't want to put full weight on it because it might break again. At the time of his arrest, Bibbins was under instructions from his doctor to use his walking boot and crutches and not to have put his full weight on his right leg. Dr. Rosen also testified that it would have been painful for Bibbins to walk without crutches or his walking boot, and that it was probably difficult for Bibbins to balance with his legs spread apart. Dr. Rosen also explained that clutching the tailgate of the pickup truck was consistent with Bibbins' testimony that he was trying to avoid putting weight on his injured leg. Okay. In light of all the evidence, the magistrate judge found Bibbins guilty of the charged offences. 1. Resisting a government employee in violation of 36. And 2. Obstructing a licence plate in violation of 36 CFR. Okay. The judge sentenced Bibbins to 30 hours of community service and restricted Bibbins from entering Lake Mead National Recreation Area for 1 year. Bibbins appealed the magistrate judge's decision to the assigned district judge, who affirmed the convictions. Bibbins timely appealed the district court's final judgment. And then we move on to the analysis. Because Bibbins appeals a final judgment of the district court, we have jurisdiction pursuant to 28 USC. We review de novo loa, Sinaloa, where's Taco at? Court's interpretation of a federal regulation, United States. We also review de novo loa, Court's interpretation of state law. Right. Okay, resisting a government employee. Bibbins was convicted of violating 36 CFR, a regulation of the National Park Service that prohibits threatening, resisting, intimidating, or intentionally interfering with a government employee or agent engaged in official duty, or on account of the performance of an official duty. Specifically, Bibbins was convicted of violating the resisting offence of the regulation. Bibbins contends that the resisting offence, 1, contains a willfulness element, and that the evidence at trial was insufficient to show that he acted willfully. The question of the mens rea requirement for a violation of resisting offence of Section 232 is one of the first impressions for this court. We agree with Bibbins that willfulness is a necessary element of the resisting violation. We ultimately conclude, however, that substantial evidence supports the magistrate judge's findings that Bibbins acted willfully. 1. Mens rea of the resisting offence. To determine the mens rea for a violation of the resisting term, we start with the plain language of the regulation, consumer prod, safety whatever. United States v. Butcher, okay, safely. Okay, the plain. Just skim through some of this because it's just a lot of text. 1 does not explicitly state a mens rea element. We did not construe this sentence to mean, okay. A statute of light and background rules of common law, right. We must consider the plain meaning of the word resisting because resisting is undefined in the regulation. The word will be interpreted as taking ordinary contemporary common meaning, right. As the magistrate judge noted, the dictionary definition of the word resist is to exert oneself, to counteract or defeat, strive against, oppose. Webster's Third New International Dictionary. From this definition, we do not think a person can resist someone or something without forming an intention to do so. Accordingly, we hold that the resisting offence of Section 232 includes a mens rea element of willfulness. Even if the dictionary definition of resisting were ambiguous, which we which we do not believe it is. Several other considerations counsel in favour of a willfulness requirement. First, the structure of Section 232. 1 suggests that willfulness is a necessary element of the resisting offence. We generally interpret statutory provisions containing multiple enumerated offences to require consistent mens rea elements. Okay. We similarly believe that Section 232 should be interpreted to require consistent mens rea elements for all its enumerated offences. We cannot help but notice that all of the offences contained in Section 232, 1, are actions that are typically done with purpose. The threatening offence of Section 232 appears to contain a willfulness requirement because the dictionary definition of threat expressly includes an intent component. See Webster's Third New. Okay, threat as an expression of an intention to inflict loss or harm on another by illegal means, and especially by means involving coercion or duress of the person threatened. Similarly, the intimidating offence probably contains a willfulness mens rea element because the verb intimidate is defined as to make timid or fearful, inspire or affect with fear. Although one could arguably intimidate someone by accident, for example, as a person is intimidated by a dangerous animal, it seems unlikely that the National Park Service would criminalise accidental intimidation. And I guess the same can happen with humans. You could have a big build, you could be very tall, very muscular, and you might scare people. Not much you can do about it. If you've got a bit of a dodgy looking face, you can't really do much about that. If people are scared, people are scared. Anyway, thus, we believe the plain meaning of the intimidating offence includes a willfulness requirement. Finally, we have previously held the obvious that the intentionally interfere offence of Section 232 requires a showing of the defendant's intent. Therefore, the plain meanings of each of the offences enumerated in Section 232 all suggest that the willfulness is required, which strengthens our conviction that the resisting violation also includes such a mens rea element. When it keeps saying mens rea, I'm almost saying like mens rea, like the back end of one. I've got to be careful. Anyway, second, our conclusion that the resisting violation of Section 232 includes a willfulness element is consistent with our precedent frequently interpreting Forest Service regulations to require such an element. As we have explained, strict criminal liability is a strong medicine, and accordingly we have read criminal intent requirements into some Forest Service regulations where their language remotely suggested it. A few references there. Constructing 36 CFR, which prohibits allowing unauthorised livestock to enter or be in the National Forest System to require the government to prove that the violator acted willfully. United States versus Launder. Interpreting a statute that prohibits permit or suffering fire to spread out of control in a national forest to require showing of willfulness. Our predilection towards reading an intent element into regulations of National Forest Service also supports our conclusions, but in order to prove that a defendant violated the resisting offence, the government must prove that the defendant acted willfully. Okay. Finally, to the extent that resisting has a legal meaning that is distinct from the colloquial definition that we apply here, the legal connotation of the term confirms the correctness of our holding that the resisting offence of Section 232 contains an element of willfulness. The Model Penal Code defines two generic misdemeanours that are similar to resisting offences under Section 232, and both of these MPC definitions require showing of purposefulness. In particular, a person commits obstructing administration of law or other governmental function under MPC 242.1 if he acts purposefully. Similarly, a person commits resisting arrest or other law enforcement under MPC 242.2 if he acts for the purpose of preventing a public servant from effecting a lawful arrest or discharging any other duty, getting in the way of their job. To the extent the resisting offence in 36 CFR 232 was designed to conform to other misdemeanour offences that involve resisting an officer or government employee, a willfulness mens rea element is appropriate. Therefore, we conclude that for a defendant to be convicted of violating the resisting offence contained in 36 CFR section 232, the government must prove that the defendant acted willfully. Okay, moving on. 2. Bibbins' conviction of violating Section 232. A magistrate judge correctly analysed the resisting offence as if it included an intent requirement. We therefore review for substantial evidence Bibbins' challenge to the sufficiency of evidence for his conviction, United States v. Douglas. Okay. There is substantial evidence to support a conviction if, after viewing the evidence in the light most favourable to the prosecution, any rational trier of fact could have found Bibbins guilty, Jackson v. Virginia. Emphasis in original. Right. Moving on. We hold that there was substantial evidence in the record to support Bibbins' conviction. Viewing the evidence in the light most favourable to the prosecution, there was evidence that Bibbins tensed his arms and made fist, jerked his right arm out of Schonzeit's and Westphafel's grip, did not get on the ground when ordered to do so, and rotated his body to the right, despite Bibbins' uncontradicted testimony that he was under severe pain during the incident, that he repeatedly informed the Rangers of his broken leg. A rational fact finder could find that Bibbins willfully resisted the Rangers. We therefore conclude that his conviction was supported by substantial evidence. Number 3. Bibbins' necessity defence. We must also address Bibbins' argument that he is entitled to the necessity defence. During closing argument, Bibbins' attorney argued to the magistrate judge that if Bibbins had intentionally resisted the Rangers, he had done so out of necessity. The magistrate judge, however, did not mention the necessity defence in his written findings and decision. Bibbins renewed his necessity defence argument in his appeal to the district judge, but the district judge similarly did not address the defence in his order, because Bibbins' attorney did not request special findings under Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure. 23. We reviewed the district court's denial of Bibbins' necessity defence for substantial evidence as explained above. There is substantial evidence to support the magistrate judge's rejection of necessity defence if, after viewing the evidence in the light of the most favourable to the prosecution, any rational trier of fact could have rejected the defence. Jackson, 443 U.S. at 319. In other words, to prevail, Bibbins must demonstrate that no rational fact finder, after viewing the evidence in the light of most favourable to the government, would reject his necessity defence. Bibbins has not made such a showing. To succeed on his necessity defence, Bibbins must show 1. That he was faced with a choice of evils and chose the lesser evil. 2. That he acted to prevent imminent harm. 3. That he reasonably anticipated a casual relation between his conduct and the harm to be avoided. And 4. That there were no other legal alternatives to violating the law. United States v. Arleno Rivera. We agree with the district court's rejection of Bibbins' necessity defence because there is substantial evidence to support a finding that Bibbins was not forced to choose between two evils. The first prong of the necessity defence requires a showing that Bibbins was faced with a choice between two evils and chose the lesser one, CID 1126. This prong reflects the underlying utilitarian principle of the necessity defence, United States v. Schoon. We have explained that the necessity defence justifies criminal acts taken to avert a greater harm, maximising social welfare by allowing a crime to be committed where the social benefits of the crime outweigh the social cost of failing to commit the crime. ID 196. Bibbins argues that he was forced to choose between two evils, protecting his leg or resisting the officers. We disagree. Even if we assume without deciding that sustaining leg pain is kind of evil, that the necessity defence is designed to prevent, we think a reasonable fact finder viewing the evidence in light most favourable to the government, we could find that Bibbins could have protected his leg without resisting the officers. Specifically, Bibbins could have more articulately vocalised his need for medical help or proposed an alternative way to comply with the Rangers' instructions. We therefore cannot say that no reasonable fact finder would reject Bibbins' necessity defence. Accordingly, we held the district court's rejection of Bibbins' necessity defence was supported by substantial evidence, and we affirm his conviction of violating 36 CFR section 232. Now, B, obstructing a licence plate. We finally move on to that one. So it reads, Bibbins was also convicted of violating 36 CFR section 4.2, which prohibits violating a provision of state law. The district court held that Bibbins violated Nevada Rev Stat section 482.275, which provides the license plates for a motor vehicle must be attached thereto during the current calendar year or registration period. Also requires, section 42.275, that every license plate must at all times be securely fastened to the vehicle, in a place and position to be clearly visible, and must be maintained free from foreign materials and in condition to be clearly legible. Critically, section 482.275 applies only to license plates on motor vehicles under Nevada law. A motor vehicle is defined as a vehicle that is self-propelled. Okay. Section 482.075. It is undisputed that the license plate on Bibbins' towed pickup truck was obstructed by a small garbage bag. The parties dispute whether the pickup truck qualifies as a motor vehicle. Under Nevada law, in light of the fact that the truck was towed at the time Bibbins was cited for obstructing the license plate's visibility. There is no authority from Nevada courts that addresses the question of whether Section 482.275 applies to towed vehicles. In deciding the question of first impression, we must use our best judgment to predict how Nevada Supreme Court would decide the issue. Helford v. Gerson, 105. In so doing, we may be aided by looking to tell reasoned decisions from other jurisdictions. Takashi versus Loomis, Armored Car Service. Okay. Bibbins argues that a towed vehicle by definition is not self-propelled. We disagree. We think the most sensible interpretation of the term self-propelled is that the word defines quality rather than an action. To conclude that self-propelled refers to an action which led to the absurd result that a vehicle ceases to be a motor vehicle under Nevada law whenever it is parked, stopped, or not powering itself. We are also persuaded by the courts of other states which have uniformly held that the term self-propelled describes a quality that is not abated when a vehicle is not propelling itself. See examples. There we go. Skim through that. If you want to pause it, feel free to do so. As the Vermont Supreme Court explained, manifestly, it was the design mechanism and construction of the vehicle and not its temporary condition that the legislature had in mind when framing the definition of a motor vehicle. Tacey 150. At 69, we find this reasoning convincing. Moreover, two treatises with entries on motor vehicles both concluded that a vehicle remains self-propelled when it is towed or inoperable. Okay. To support his contention that his pickup truck was not self-propelled whilst it was being towed, Bibbins relies on an opinion by the Nevada Attorney General, which states that although a dune buggy is capable of self-propulsion, it is not self-propelled whilst being towed on the highways of Nevada, and as such, it is not a motor vehicle as defined by NRS 482.75, 1969 Nevada, Op Atti Gen. Okay, more of that. I'm not binding on the Nevada courts. Okay. We're not persuaded by the 1969 opinion, which contains scant reasoning to support its conclusion that dune buggies are not motor vehicles whilst being towed, because it would be illogical to consider a self-propelled impermanent quality. We affirm Bibbins' conviction for obscuring a license plate in violation. Conclusion. Because substantial evidence supports Bibbins' conviction for willfully violating 36 CFR section 232, we affirm his conviction. We also affirm Bibbins' conviction for violating 36 CFR 4.2. Affirmed. Footnotes. Let's just see what this is. We draw this factual background from the magistrate judge's findings and decision from evidence presented at Bibbins' trial. Bibbins' Park Rangers Brian Lake, Teresa Pickard, Michelle Schonzeit, and Eric Westphal, and Dr. Mark Rosen testified at the trial. 2. It is worth emphasising that despite the detailed narrative that the Rangers provided, the incident happened very quickly. The magistrate judge observed that, and although the Rangers described the foregoing events in a deliberate step-by-step manner, the time counter on the video audio recording indicates that only 20 seconds passed from the point at which Ranger Lake first told Bibbins to spread his legs, though the completion of the tasering and handcuffing. 3. Throughout this opinion, we used the words willful, purposefully, and intentional interchangeably. See United States v. Awad. Okay, noting that in the criminal context, a willful act is one undertaken with a bad purpose. Right. Explaining that a purpose corresponds to the concept of a specific intent. Quoted. Right. Number 4, besides looking to the plain language of the statute, we technically also look to the intent of Congress to determine what mental state is required to prove a violation of statute. Right. As a regulatory offence, we could not find any relevant regulatory history to advise of the mental state requirement for a violation of the resisting term. Accordingly, we focus our analysis on the plain language of the regulation. We avoid casting our analysis in terms of specific intent and general intent because these expressions have long been the source of a good deal of confusion. Right. Instead, we employ this court's preferred practice and clarify the precise mens rea required. Nothing about our courts discourage the use of generic specific intent instructions and the preferred practice, an intent instructions that properly reflects the intent requirements of the charged offence. 6. Bibbins argues that the magistrate judge incorrectly used a preponderance standard in finding that Bibbins intended to resist with the Rangers, although the magistrate judge could have more artfully explained his weighing of the evidence. Appellant review does not require that we suspend the reason whilst interpreting the language employed by judges. Right? We conclude that the magistrate judge was aware of the government's obligation to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt, and we therefore review Bibbins' conviction for substantial evidence. Is that it? Okay. So quite a mouthful of words there. Kind of interesting to read out. Let me know your thoughts down below. So I feel that court document was a bit more interesting this time because it gave a bit of a detailed account and story of how things played out. 2008, an appeal made 2011, dragging on a little bit. Now, the situation of Bibbins at the time of this resisting, purposely or accidentally because of his leg and that being caught up, misunderstanding, whatever it may be. Some people may think Bibbins is to blame here, at fault. Others may say police brutality, whichever way, whatever. Let's not go too deep down that route. By the end of the day, the reason why it was interesting and important to read is partially because of the resistance, okay? It doesn't have to be a bit about get your legs spread your legs and get down or do whatever. It's not about that resisting part because it could have been to do with Bibbins' leg, which was, preventing him from being able to move. But the initial first part of resistance, which shows more, is Bibbins' lack of respect to the higher authority at the time he was pulled over and questioned about his license plate being obstructed by a bin bag at the back. And he said, oh, it's there. You don't need to damn about this. It is there. You don't need to see it because it is present. Something like that. Use the word damn. May have had a certain tone on his voice at the time of saying it. Seemed a bit abrupt and a little bit rude. Was it necessary? Almost a bit of resistance, right? Sometimes when you use certain words and responses to people, someone questions you on something or points out an issue and you respond back abruptly. Bit of resistance. Is it because he's annoyed at the time, frustrated? He knows what's going to happen next. He's thinking, oh, here we go, in trouble with the law once again. How am I going to be treated this time? Something like that. So there was already a level of resistance with Bibbins at the time when he was in his vehicle, even before he exited. So you could say a bit of stubbornness, awkwardness, and, his outlook towards the law, the police. I mean, as it read, he's got in trouble in the past, and I think that's the key thing. Numerous incidents, violence, the way he's treated officers, policemen, policewomen, or whatever, right? So if you're in a situation where you've done a background check on this individual, you know that they can be violent, and of course they can retaliate back towards you yourself in the position you are, an officer, police person. You're going to be extra cautious, right? And if there's any telling sign of a bit of resistance, you're probably going to be more cautious than usual. If the person moves abruptly, slightly, raises the arm, does the opposite, you're going to be thinking, what's this person doing? Are they trying to resist? Are they trying to do more? Are they going to do a surprise counterattack? It tends to be a bit more cautious when you know someone's got a past criminal history and it just happens to tie in with a situation like this. Some kind of interaction between the police and Bibbins, and it has ended badly in the past. So could it have happened badly again? So I get, police people being a bit more cautious on that occasion due to what's previously happened. But in terms of the actual event that took place, right, maybe doesn't sound as significant. Maybe doesn't really apply to the Dylan Rounds case, right? License plate obstructed, slightly resisting. Oh well, the end. But it's important, these court documents where they make reference points to past actions, as said multiple times, violence, fights, retaliating back to the police and others. When we heard about attempted rape in the past, 76, attempted murder as well, and then 1978, a time there where Bibbins was doing a lot of bad stuff, right? All kinds of things, and you turn out on them with the other misdemeanors, the assaults, was there an aggravated assault as well, or just pure assault? A range of different stuff, right? And we saw it from the overview in the initial first video, then following on into the second one. So you do get a bit of a bigger picture that Bibbins comes off as a potentially aggressive individual and a danger to the general public. Still to this day, maybe, we've been in possession of a firearm, as his recent arrest is worth taking into consideration. You get what I'm saying? So I do think that Bibbins is worse than Brenner in terms of the range and the amount of trouble what Bibbins has done and the crimes he's committed. And even if it hasn't actually followed through, such as the rape or the murder, there was a form of intent. It was attempted. That was the initial goal, to do this and to do that to somebody. Now, when it comes to Brenner, was it attempted murder there? Some people say so, but such as the Maryland shooting, as for the court, the case, how that went down, it was reduced from attempted murder to attempt to wound an individual, harm them, hurt them with the use of a firearm, but not to kill them, where it's outright stated officially that attempted murder took place with Bibbins when he was doing something to a person in the past. So one's defined as attempted, the other one was minimalized. So you could say that that's enough proof to suggest, to put across the argument that Bibbins is more dangerous and is worse than the likes of James Brenner. Now, at the end of the day, both are present in the Dylan Rounds case in terms of proximity and knowing one another. That's what makes them a person of interest, and I feel that Bibbins has gone under the radar ever since. Has he been questioned enough? Don't think so. Was he involved in that lie detector test? I don't think so. So it just feels like things have fallen flat. Unless there is a very strong alibi to do with Bibbins, like he was nowhere near the place at the time, maybe, but I've not really heard that since. You want to fill it in, feel free to do so. But I do think that Bibbins is a person of interest. I do feel that Bibbins is, how would I word it, more dangerous than Brenner and done worse things. And if Bibbins is in a situation where he feels some form of guilt with Brenner for whatever reason from the past, that Bibbins gave Brenner lifts about to places and shops. If there was ever a time or moment where Bibbins felt he owed Brenner for whatever reason, could that have carried on over into the Dylan Rounds case? If you owe somebody, whether it be recent time or for a long period, in a situation where Brenner could be responsible in the murder of Dylan Rounds, Brenner could order somebody else, such as the person that owes them a favour, to step in and help in some way. I don't know, it's just a suggestion, right? It might make more sense when we do a map analysis, right? The purpose of these videos are to document people of interest, whether they once were or currently are, or to reinforce why they should be right now, okay, such as Bibbins. And it's also taking a look back, because we did it with Brenner too, to see who are these characters out there? How dangerous are they? How do they compare with one another? And knowing that Dylan Rounds was surrounded by these type of individuals of a certain age, puts it all into perspective, right? Important we do that and look back at the past history of these people to see if any of the crimes committed back then are similar to what happened to Dylan Rounds in 2022. And in terms of violence and retaliation and resistance, that type of nasty stuff, attempted murder from Bibbins, could have been recreated, right? I mean, it's on the spot. But when Bibbins spoke to Justin Rounds, and Justin Rounds quoted Bibbins in that second video of Heavy D, the interview with the parents and Heavy D in the Grainshed property, Justin Rounds said that Bibbins overheard Brenner threatening to kill Dylan Rounds. I'm going to kill Dylan Rounds. That was said. Did that really happen? Or could it have been Bibbins that said it, but reversed it on to Brenner to throw the blame at him? I don't know, it's just a suggestion, right? You can say a small community, but in a vast area, okay? And away from many other resources and people. So a feeling and a sense of, I don't know, being a bit more invincible. Maybe in the eyes of them, they could get a bit cocky in how they respond and react. Could Bibbins' actions of being out in Luce in Utah be driven from his past criminal history of getting into trouble constantly and wanting to get away from it all, wanting to be away from the law, the police, because in Lucin it is further away from police and police patrolling the area and getting to the location. So maybe Bibbins wanted to go to Lucin because it was away from it all and quieter, so he could do his own thing. And also if he ever did cause trouble, he's probably more than likely to get away with it, maybe. As well, looking back at the criminal history of Bibbins and even Brenner and maybe others, besides the type of crimes committed, which could be linked and applied to the Dylan Rounds outcome, it's also the consistency of reoffending. If someone has only committed a crime or two and that's it, and it was in the past, never done anything since, could be a cleaner individual, they've changed their ways. But if someone's constantly reoffending like Brenner, maybe Bibbins as well to an extent, then you think, well, if it was a bit more fresh and active, they could have done it once again, and it just so happens to tie in with what's happened now. Well, speaking of 2022, 28th of May time, right? So I do think Bibbins has gone under the radar, and that's why I've done these videos, to put it back into the light. And maybe when I do more of a universal video, taking into account all what we've heard and gathered throughout these little series videos, when we do the map analysis, as with the location of Bibbins and how it could tie in with the Dylan Rounds case and some other events occurring around the same time, I don't know, it might make people question and double think and suggest, maybe Bibbins is more involved than others say. Now, okay, the family haven't said anything about it, but have they cleared Bibbins' name either? Seems to be a bit of a grey spot. As said, Justin Rounds quoted Bibbins, not in terms of Bibbins being suspicious, but what Bibbins knows of what Brenner said, supposedly. Candice Cooley did kind of dismiss it, though, at the time in that interview, so I don't know if that means anything. Let me know your thoughts. We can still do short videos, though, here and there, in response or looking back at interviews that took place. I think it's good to do short videos, 15, 30-second clips of a key highlighted moment of what was said and how it could have linked to the case or prevented it, the outcome, right? In advance, besides the map analysis, might give it a bit of a space in between, this transition on over so it doesn't get too heavy. But I think the next video I might do, and be on the lookout for it, it's going to be putting into perspective Jim Terry's original concept of saying cameras should be put out there, it would have caught it all and supposedly solved it. There's for and against arguments there. Be on the lookout for that video. It might be tomorrow or the day after. I want to look at Jim Terry's point of view when he claimed and said that those cameras need putting out there, and then he said afterwards, I told you so, etc., etc. The same old scripts and lines. I could do the voice, but it's going to strain the voice. Can't be bothered. Well, it's not going to strain it, but I can't be bothered. I've already said a lot already with all those scripts read out on screen. But I just want to let you know what's coming up ahead, so just be on the lookout for it. Try and get some short videos out here and there in between. Now, we're not done yet, because what we need to do now is look back, reflect on some recent YouTube comments. Only a couple to get through. Let's acknowledge them right now. So here we are with the comments, adjust them to the newest. Start from the bottom. Cleo says, thank you for the information. You're welcome. The next individual says, Badger Life, who spends all her time criticising the childishness in chat after watching last night's chat, must have given up with if you cannot beat them, join them attitude, with a weird emoji. So Indiana, once again, is calling out somebody, this time not me. Miracle, joke. Indiana calling out Badger Life. stating that Badger spends all her time criticising the chat. Well, Indiana, that is incorrect. There are times and moments where Badger Life will make a reference or post a rat emoji to highlight certain cancerous humans that may be present or who have returned over time. I do understand that. Might have been the odd occasion where Badger Life has said, oh, there's some dodgy people here, or but that's just because Badger Life wasn't aware that some of those dodgy people originated from the Kenny Veach case when I was doing Kenny Veach videos. So sometimes bit blurred lines, but I can understand what Badger Life is referring to, because at the end of the day, when it comes to Warlike Ref's live premieres, over time, there can be a bit of disruption, right? Sometimes it's fun and casual, and other times it just occurs at important moments when an important message is trying to be spread across to inform the general public. And Badger Life at times has resorted to watching in the background because it's got that disruptive, that she wants to take the information in. And that's fully understandable because, you know, other people have done it with time, and you know, some people have stuck with it. So shout out to those people watching in the backgrounds, right? And yeah, I guess those lurking as well. I think at times there's like two types of people. Those that come in to intentionally cause disruption and chaos in a nasty way, in a way to disrespect and mock the coverage on the Dylan Rounds case, to try and prevent people from listening and learning. That's intentional. It's very unnecessary, but it happens. And then they run off back to their other communities and act like good little dogs and listen in and not cause any problem, but they'll dish it out. Very one-sided, that. Then you get the other people that come along, you know, regularly or here and there, that might be a bit more light-hearted and a bit more casual. They just want to talk. They want to hang out. Might not be taking the video seriously enough, which is unfortunate, but it can happen, right? And as we've seen with time, the odd few individuals that have, I don't know, got into a bit of a hissy fit because they don't like the idea of being labelled or acknowledged that they are causing a bit of disruption, but at the same time, it's kind of understandable, but still, there's a time and place. Some people have thrown the toys out the pram. We've already seen it already. But in terms of Badger herself, I'd say about 90% of the time, Badger has been one of the more serious individuals when it comes to the Dylan Rounds case. You know, of course, here and there, such as last night before, there'll be moments of casualness and playfulness, but at the end of the day, I think that's necessary when you're covering a serious topic, right? As I said, time and place for everything. You can be a bit loose and lighthearted here and there. It can loosen any tension and any dark thoughts or feelings, because maybe for some who are emotionally invested in the Dylan Rounds case, you need a bit of space, you need a bit of time to be able to relax or to shut off without thinking about it, because maybe the case makes you upset, sad, or you get some slight negative feelings. So if you can disassociate from those negative thoughts or feelings and have a bit of fun, then, you know, it should be allowed, right? But as I said, time and place. And Badger Life most of the time does take it pretty serious. And, you know, if you're talking about criticising, it wouldn't be just towards the viewers. Badger Life has brought points up about people in the case and whether those trying to solve it, make sense of it, those searching, or more involved in the case because they were caught up in it, mentioning strengths, weaknesses, and so. So I do note that Badger Life does take it serious most of the time, and for most part of it, good individual, got no issues with them. But for Indiana to say that Badger Life spends all her time criticising is definitively an exaggeration. And it's also, once again, rich coming from Indiana, who spends most of her time, technically speaking, from most of her comments and messages with little digs and prods at myself. But, you know, done, you could argue, a little bit more sophisticated, so it doesn't sound as hateful, doesn't sound as toxic, but still, there are slight little reference points, insults, aims towards a certain somebody such as myself. So I do see it. And, you know, it's one of those things, Indiana. You know, some of the stuff you say now, was that what you were thinking months ago, okay, before, let's say, the Bob Farrell situation, as you noted. Before all that, Indiana, was there a time and place where you had many thoughts on your mind, negative thoughts, or, insults aimed at me, but you never said it at the time because you had some form of respect towards me because I didn't cause trouble at a point in time, so you felt there was no need to say certain stuff? It's just interesting. That's what I'm interested in, okay? Because, of course, along the way, a bumpy patch, things going wrong, altered your perception and your attitude changed, okay? And when the attitude changed, you went from being a bit lighthearted at times and making references about the case to just outright, making false statements, accusing the channel of gaining views in an unnatural way without any proof of it. Also, making references or insults at me being somewhat crippled or my back problems, supposedly Warlike Ref having back pain, and highlighting it in a funny manner on Bob Farrell's page and post. Also wishing and saying, I wonder what he'll be like at 40 years of age. Well, the factor is, Indiana, there's no guarantee that I'll even be alive at the age of 40. There's no guarantee with anything in life. Anything can happen at any moment in time, Someone's hands could be decapitated from a brick falling on them from a great height. Or there's a chance that a horse could end up running you over out of nowhere. Or even an item from a plane dropping down through the sky and landing on your head and possibly putting you in a coma. Anything can happen at any point, okay? But Indiana, as said, it's very evident that your persona and attitude has changed. The question is, have you always been this way, but you never felt there was a need to show it in the past? Of course, Indiana has referred to the point of, does Warlike Ref have a lower respect rate, and is he more insulting towards the older generation of people? Yeah, the majority of people that watch my videos are of an older generation or so, and they have acknowledged and appreciated what I've done and what I've said and what I've covered, so it kind of counters that, Indiana. I mean, could argue, possibly, and put across, Indiana, that you have some form of hatred or disapproval towards the younger generation, such as myself, critiquing little references and little points. And of course, once again, Indiana, the way you construct your sentences and words, you try to be a bit more sophisticated so it doesn't come out as outright negative, but there's those little digs here and there. And of course, when you are on Bob Farrell's channel and live stream, you kind of gossip a bit more, don't you? Now, that aside, a few people have reached out to me over time who have been on the receiving end of you, Indiana. Them sharing their thoughts, their experiences, and what they've heard about you and the things you have said with time behind their backs, just like myself. Very interesting. So it's not the first time. You've done it before. And of course, Indiana did claim that she is not a loyal individual. She is not loyal to anybody. Indiana, the real question is, if you're not loyal to anyone, are you loyal to any religion? Okay? Because if you look up to Islam, the religion of peace, you are far from that. You are not showing peace, you're showing hatred. Now, would the Prophet Muhammad approve of that? I don't think so. I don't think the Muslim community would be, in approval of your hatred and your behaviour. Now, Indiana could say that, well, Warlike Ref's doing it, so why can't I? I thought in life you're supposed to become a better person than the other. And if you follow certain religions and rules, it'll probably state somewhere that don't lower yourself to those standards, to what other people are doing. Become a better person yourself. Indiana, you failed at the first hurdle. It's very disappointing, but continue to speak and to show your true self, okay? I still have videos to make, and I still will defend myself when I have to, regardless of who it is, what age that they are, and what gender, okay? It's been acknowledged, and, The other positive that needs to be acknowledged in a separate video will be to do with the, I guess you could call it, family members here and now. It's very interesting what's happened in recent time when compared to what's been said in the past as well. So in general public watching, just be on the lookout for it, because there is another video that needs to come along, and it is a positive one, don't worry. So now we move on to Christie's important comment. Let's see what that's all about. So she says, what I wanted to say initially with my comment was that if Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds would have visited Dylan Rounds more often, they would have maybe noticed the danger Dylan Rounds was living in. It's more about caring than helping out, what I meant. Okay, so that's worded very well by Christie. It's an important point, and I'll add on to it in a second, okay? So I mentioned about, with Brenna threatening to kill Justin Rounds in the past and Justin Rounds unfazed by it, oh well, brushing it off the shoulders, makes you wonder what was needed in order to raise, some kind of awareness and alert level. Indiana with the passive aggressive ... as we've seen recently, the death of Dylan. I'd say that's incorrect, Indiana. I don't think it required the death of Dylan. I think there are alternatives, and I can get to that in a second. Do we have anything else? We got Glenn. Shout out to Glenn. Very interesting profile picture. It's good. I always like it when people keep their profile pictures somewhat the same over time. It makes it easier to remember people, right? As a visual reminder. Okay, so I'm just going to add my thoughts on to Christie's key important comment here. As for everybody else watching right now, be sure to share your thoughts down below too, okay? So, just read it out one more time to really process it. To say, my comment was, if Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds have visited Dylan Rounds' farm and area more often, would they have noticed, the danger, the threat Dylan Rounds was living in? Would the parents have picked up on the dangers of Brenna, maybe Don Hatley, maybe Bibbins? In my honest opinion, what I would say is there is no guarantee that the parents would pick up on the intimate danger of Dylan and his position. There's no guarantee that they're going to be in the right place at the right time of when a conversation, an argument occurs or threatening behaviour is displayed. You get what I'm saying? I mean, it was by chance that when Don Hatley, Dylan Rounds and somebody else, someone working for Justin Rounds at the time in 2021 at Justin's shop when a vehicle was being fixed or so, Don Hatley, Brenna being present, Dylan Rounds too, but Dylan left the area to go into a different room or something. Justin in a different room, but listening into the audio CCTV camera, which depicted Brenna showing hatred and jealousy in the name of Dylan Rounds. That it was Brenna showing his thoughts, his true thoughts, opening up, showing his true self towards Don Hatley as to what Brenna thought about Dylan. And it just so happened to be in a place and time where the likes of Justin Rounds picked up on it. Now, was it seen as a danger, a threat? No, it was just jealousy and maybe a bit of pettiness and, it being unnatural, not needed, but Justin didn't see much of it, didn't think much of it, right? You fast forward, fast track, rewind before that, I believe, at an earlier time, I said about the reference of Brenna threatening to kill Dylan Rounds' father, Justin Rounds. And Dylan Rounds was present to hear that when Brenna was saying it. And Dylan Rounds passed that message on to Justin Rounds. But then it was resolved afterwards with a bit of a conversation. Directly with Justin, no, I think Larry supposedly stepped in. But regardless of where it's resolved or not, a threat was issued and Justin Rounds brushed it off the shoulder. So, if Justin Rounds, at least, was present more on Dylan's farm, okay, around Dylan, at times of when resistance was shown by Brenna, maybe Don Hatley, maybe Bibbins, a form of hatred, a form of negativity, physically, verbally, more threats, reoccurring threats at the time, and providing Justin Rounds was at the right place at the right time of hearing and seeing it, which is kind of slim, right, because you're out in the open, compared to when Justin was in a different room and at his shop and the likes of Brenner, Don Hatley were in a different room, probably unknowing of CCTV or audio picking up on the conversations, a private one. If you're out in the open in a field, how are you going to sneak about? How are you going to appear on site at the time of when something bad goes down? Because if you show up, you're going to be visible because it's pretty open and vast. There's nowhere really to hide, right? Unless you hide behind a dirt mound, a tree, behind the grain shed. But still, it's just not enough cover, right? It'll be too telling, okay? So as quiet of a place it is, it's very open, right? It's not exactly concealed. So if Justin Rounds was present or Candice Cooley, certain natural behaviour probably wouldn't show because the likes of Brenner, Hatley, Don Hatley, Bibbins and some others in between may not show their true colours because they know that Dylan's parents are around, so behaviour can shift. Kind of like the researcher effect when experiments are being done on people or with people, social experiment, an inner experiment with a certain test group, let's say. The participants, if in the presence of the researcher, there could be some kind of researcher biasness, there could be some kind of unnatural behaviour or response from the participants because they're under the influence of the researcher that's currently present and it's known to them, so it's not as natural how they would act, behave, or what they would say. Maybe the researcher group were more likely to act in a certain way to please the researcher because they know the researcher is present. And then it's all out the window. You're not going to see people's true colours. Well, I've revealed people's true colours and some have done it naturally themselves. There's time and place. Sometimes it can take longer. But referring back to Justin Rounds, if Justin Rounds was in the right place, right time, and saw or heard something not so pleasant on the receiving end of Dylan Rounds being caught up in it, would it be enough for Justin Rounds to say, yeah, that Dylan Rounds is in danger, Dylan Rounds is in trouble, I need to step on him? There's a chance that maybe, well, there's probably a high chance that Justin Rounds would step in some way or another to defend his son, of course. Would it be enough for Justin to say, hey, Dylan, I'm taking you back home or taking you out of here, it's not good for you? Maybe not. Maybe Justin Rounds would be a bit more, can't do much about it. Dylan Rounds becoming an adult. What can I do? Dylan makes his own choices. But there could have been some kind of discussions, right? A bit of more guidance for Justin to say, hey, Dylan, I know you might think this is okay, or play it off as cool with Brenner, he's just been an ass, as it was quoted previously, but just be careful. Maybe don't say this or do that, or when you feel there's a bit of tension, get away from the area, it's not good for you. Some kind of guidance could have been given if the likes of Justin Rounds was around more, and also at the time of when bad stuff happened. But as I said, there's no guarantee that you'd be in the right place at the right time of when bad things happen. So, you can't blame the parents there in terms of timing and everything. But to be present in the area, to learn and sense more about the area and the people present, could have done a bit more background search, or I know people say that there'd be no need to do a background search on people if you never felt suspicious in the first place. But then again, if there was the odd warning and threat by the likes of Brenner, and that Dylan is around that type of person, that's a negative influence, a bad influence. You might do something about it. You might just do a bit of research. This person gave a threatening message. Maybe I'll do some background check just to see if they've done it before, or if they have followed through with their actions. Have they done attempted murder or attempted wounding? Oh, they have. Well, maybe that's not good to be around someone like Dylan. Oh, and how did that thing happen? Originally, the attempted, the malicious wounding through a work dispute. Oh, Brenner is working for Dylan, and Brenner has shown signs of jealousy at times because of Dylan, the position he's in and what he has, and Brenner doesn't like it. So if there ever was a work dispute, and Brenner also has a firearm, then you could have a repeat of the Maryland shooting, but this time fatal. You see how you can tie one thing to another? Fortunately, it never happened. But what about Candice Cooley? If Candice Cooley was around more on site, on land, once again, it's got to be in the right place, right time. No guarantee. But to tie it all in together right now, okay? Indiana's suggestion, which is a bit extreme in terms of The only way the parents would know that such and such a person is dangerous and Dylan is in the presence of danger is if Dylan is dead, killed. I don't think so. I think Candice Cooley. Some people like to call Candice Cooley controlling, a control freak, or maybe just a bit more stubborn, a bit more verbal, digs her foot into the ground at times when needed, maybe, even when it's not warranted in the eyes of other people. What I would say is, whether it be mother's instinct, okay, picking up on something, take in mind that, is Candice Cooley even aware of when Justin Rounds, at the time, when Justin Rounds was threatened by Brenna, that Brenna wanted to kill Justin Rounds? Did Candice Cooley get told about it back then? I wonder. Because if not, Candice Cooley would have been left in the dark, just like with other things along the way, right? So if you're left in the dark, you might not act on stuff, and then you get accused and blamed of not caring. But you can only care when you know the context and if something's happened. If someone is in danger and you know about it, and then maybe you take action, it's like a form of care and concern. If you don't take any action because you never knew about the problem in the first place, it's not really your fault, okay? It's down to poor communication in the background. So there's that, right? But I'd say if Candice Cooley was present more on, for example, Dylan's farm, and somehow was around at the time of Brenna or Don Hatley or Chase Venstra or Bibbins showing their true colours, showing a form of danger or threat towards Dylan, I'm sure Candice Cooley would step in quicker and probably more sensitive to picking up on, threats, elements of danger in the presence of Dylan and what he's surrounded by. Maybe Justin would brush it off a little bit more. Candice Cooley, mother instinct taking over, whether it be exaggerative, whether it be a bit oversensitive, hyper alert, but in order to prevent anything going wrong or bad things happening to Dylan. Now, look, people can say, well, Candice Cooley didn't seem to care about Dylan until Dylan went missing and it was all mentioned in the news and then on camera. This is where Candice Cooley is really active and talkative all of a sudden. She wasn't like any of this back then when Dylan was alive, so why now? Kind of goes against it. I get that, okay? We saw the post by Justin Rounds where Justin made a dig at Candice Cooley saying, you didn't care then, you only care now when the cameras show up. What, fame, attention, focus? No. People mention shady background references to Candice Cooley as well. But what we're saying, the hypothesis, okay, on the conditions that if the parents, one or both, were around Dylan more at the farm, they may have picked up on that something was wrong. They may have seen the dangers, the true dangers as to the people present out there living besides Dylan. If they were out there more, they may have seen the threat earlier. Would they have prevented it? Maybe not. No guarantee there either. They can only do so much as parents. If Dylan is of an adult or getting to the age of an adult, Dylan would make his own decisions, wouldn't he? So you can't pin all the responsibilities onto the parents, right, of Dylan. But if I worded it in my way, what I'd say is the chances of being more aware and alert of potential dangers faced towards Dylan in the eyes of the parents would increase if their frequency in visiting the area where those dangers lie and live. If they went down there more, they may see it more. There'd be chances of seeing something, being more alert and aware of possible problems that Dylan could face with time. But if you used to be more specific between Justin Rounds and Candice Cooley, who would be more emotionally in tune with picking up on those threats and dangers, I'd probably say Candice Cooley. She might react quicker than Justin. If Justin Rounds brushed it off when Brenna threatened to kill him, and Justin is fully aware that Dylan is in the presence of Brenna, a person that threatened to kill the father, Justin himself, and thought, oh, never mind. How would Candice Cooley have reacted if the likes of Brenna threatened to kill Candice Cooley and Dylan told mother? How would Candice Cooley react? I'm sure she would take it up. I'm sure she would get offended by it and take direct action. If Candice Cooley is very determined, and shows a lot of grit when it comes to facing against the likes of the LE, and Candice being very vocal about it and mentioning all the critiques and more so the weaknesses and the problems caused. She was very passionate there. I'm sure at the time, if she's put in danger, okay, and Dylan has informed her about it, I think Candice Cooley would probably react, whether it be her reacting and being frustrated and maybe slightly concerned that she's received a death threat, or if not that, putting first the sense of, okay, I received the death threat, but I'm the mother and my son is around a potential killer. I need to act on it to get Dylan away from this threat. One or the other, I think Candice Cooley would have reacted a lot different compared to how Justin Rounds did, okay? So on that basis, that example, if Candice Cooley was on site on the farm at a time of when she saw something or heard something negative and Dylan was caught up in it, I'm sure Candice Cooley would do something about it. Would it have led to Dylan's survival? Probably not. But there might have been a bit more resistance and picking up on something, okay? But I guess one of the factors to why family didn't go down there, because the distance, but it's a farm, there's really nowhere to live, it's not practical, and in the eyes of them at the time, there was no dangers down there, so there would be no need to come down there to see how Dylan was. And if Dylan being active at the time before his disappearance, there'd be no need to go on down there, you know, if there was any worry or concern, because there was radio silence. There wasn't up until that day of the 28th. So yes, there's explanations and reasons as to why family members didn't go down there, but if, in a hypothesis that they did before Dylan's disappearance, they may have picked up on something before it actually happened. More so Candice Cooley, because of motherly instincts, let's say, and a bit more sensitive on picking up on stuff and reacting to slightly negative things, right? So it's very good. It's very good that Christy left that comment there to, you know, really clarify what she was referring to, because there's just this brief discussion on top of what we've previously looked at is very, very important, okay? So, you know, if you want to add on your thoughts, if you agree with my line of thoughts or not, let me know down below. You want to add on any observations or your responses to hearing about Bibbins and the trouble he's got into over time and how he's treated the law, the police, sometimes resistance, other times violence. Is that why the LE are avoiding Bibbins in the Dylan Rounds case to an extent? Let me know your thoughts, okay? Hopefully you found the video somewhat interesting. And as said, the next video to come might be to do with Jim Terry's claim and proposal of cameras being out there in the first place. What's the significance behind it if they were implemented? I'm going to give you my thoughts next time round, so be on the lookout for it. And of course, after that, a map analysis on a very important matter to do with Bibbins to tie it in with this series. There is still unfinished business, and no matter the resistance that I face, besides anyone else in the case and those internally, besides the resistance that I face, whether it be in general or because of this video, a section of it, regardless of what those say in the comment section down below, the minority, regardless of whether certain people then go on to other channels to gossip about me and make more references or criticisms in a sophisticated manner or whatever, do so if you need to, okay? I still have videos to make. I will make them, I will upload them, simple as that. It may come across as some bad news to those out there, but oh well, it is what it is. So I get my videos done when I can, okay, and hopefully it spreads awareness on the case and opens up new discussions and maybe new people come on in too. And then once a certain checkpoint is reached, then I can focus back on other cases. As you know, same procedure as usual. All in all though, I hope on a form of a consistent basis that most people that watch this video found it somewhat helpful, okay? Thanks for watching. I appreciate people's patience, and for those that do watch, and those in the background as well that don't cause any harm. That's all good. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. For now, goodbye and good night.